Portsmouth announced the signing of 26-year-old centre-back Rob Atkinson on loan from Bristol City. But why have we signed him? And what is everyone missing here? And why might a player who hasn't played in nearly 2 years be the key for survival in the Championship for Portsmouth? Now, starting with his characteristics on the ball, he's got incredibly sharp movement in and around the box from corners and free kicks, especially from corners though. He loves kind of initially facing the goal whilst kind of grappling a defender before tends to drop a shoulder and then burst to the front post, although he does do it to the far post as well at times. He kind of reminds me of Conor Ogbie in that sense. If you look at when Portsmouth got a corner, if you look at Conor Ogbie's movement, he's kind of always on the move. He's a bit like a boxer, just buzzing around, but he knows where he's going. It's not, movement without sense. It's obviously it's pre-planned to an extent because set pieces, there's so much detail goes into it. But this kind of movement and tenacity and desire to find and attack the ball, Joe Perdomo, set piece coach at Portsmouth, he'll absolutely adore that because he uses Conor Ogbie quite a lot as a target player, and I feel like Rob can be similar in that sense. When it comes to his ball progression, though, from deep areas, Rob Atkinson prefers to dribble and carry the ball to attack space rather than passing it. Although there'll be more on that to follow. We'll kind of discuss his passing a bit later on. My only real gripe with his ball carries is that the detail of his forward pass, kind of at the end of a carry, can be a little bit inconsistent at times, going to the wrong foot of a player or kind of slightly behind them. In an ideal world, you carry the ball up, you gain 20, 30 yards, whatever, even 10, 5, doesn't really matter. And then you immediately play into the back foot of a forward-facing player such as Josh Murphy, unlocking him to play forward. If you look at Jacob Farrell, he does that immensely well. The detail of his pass is top, and then you can kind of follow up with bursts of movement. But that being said, he's an absolute monster when it comes to eating up ground with kind of those, I'd call it confident but measured bursts. He's not charging in with no sense. He knows where he's going. He's one of them players that's kind of he's gonna carry, he's gonna look down and then look back up and it says, okay, is there ground to be gained here? Where's the pressure coming from? And then if there is pressure coming, can you then find a little third man combination? Maybe you go out into the 8, up to the 10, for example, or up to the winger. He's a clever boy. He doesn't often get nicked in possession when he carries the ball, which is very promising. Now, look at his passing. One of his favourite passes is kind of when he's in deep build up, a left centre half, kind of around here, let's say. He'll shift onto his left and then wrap a reversed low and zipped pass to the far side 8. So if you imagine he's got the ball here, he's going to hit that area up here. Now, if I'm being picky, I think he can add a little bit more disguise to it because, as I said, he does kind of push onto his left and then zip back across. But if you know what you're looking for, you're going to see it coming. So if you can add a little bit more disguise with his hips, kind of maybe show even more to the left and look like he's going to play out to the left back or the left 8 or maybe hit the channel to find the left winger, as well as, doing it more often. I think his issue isn't a lack of technique per se. I mean, you can add a bit more disguise, but it's a lack of, I don't know, he tends to play it quite simple, which I like. He plays quite a calm possession game, but I feel like he can add more high value passes, shall we say. This is also, I think it's slightly because of his one-footedness. He's a left-footed defender, but he's not got a bad right foot, but there are limited passing angles there. He's not one of them players that can kind of wrap passes on both feet. So yeah, but I would say one other thing you can add to his locker. I watched 3 games of Rob Atkinson before he got injured over the last day or so. I would like to see him hit more long passes. We don't have as much. I've not looked at the data, but I'd guess there's not as many long passes off of our left centre half because our right winger isn't really a 1v1 threat. Most times, if you watch, you'll see Regan Paul or Marlon Packett right centre back, absolutely leather diagonals to Josh Murphy to try and play him in. But it would be nice if the left centre back also provided that as well. And I feel like Rob's got it on his locker because he's strong. He can kick a ball well. It's just about adding a bit more ambition to his play. The moment you've all been waiting for: is the flashy new defender a good defender? Well, the answer to that is yes. Yes, he is. He defends the box, I would say, immaculately well for the level, immaculately well from crossing scenarios. He's always side on, so facing kind of towards the other goal. He's ready to attack the ball. He's not set early and kind of predicting where the ball's going to go. He's always ready to adapt, and he sits off his man a little bit. It doesn't get touched tight immediately because obviously it could get spun. He gives himself time, he gives himself space to work out where the ball's going, and and what zones he needs to lock off. He locks the front post off pretty well, which I really like. It kind of gives a lot of freedom for the double pivot to kind of drop around the penalty spot and clear up cutbacks. Now, in terms of his front foot defending rather than his box defending, incredibly positive, incredibly brave. I remember the first game I watched of him today, or yesterday rather. I watched him versus Coventry. This is 2 years ago, and he was tasked with defending 1v1 versus Victor Gyökeres the entire game, basically. And he won, as far as I can recall, every single physical and aerial duel against him. And Gyökeres has many things. He's an incredible link man. He moves really well, but he's also very physical. He's a big boy. He moves, he grapples, he battles, and Rob Atkinson had the upper hand of him that entire game. And when he was kind of when Gyökeres did manage to pin him with his back to him and have the ball at his feet, not once did Atkinson get spun. He was incredibly, kept the distance and didn't let him move. It kind of forced Gyökeres to kind of play out to Harmer and then switch the other side, which gave Bristol City a lot of time to react and get set. Now, in terms of his weaknesses, because every player has his weaknesses, find me a player without a weakness, and you won't find one. um, there are moments, certain scenarios where, let's say, if we look here, the opposition left winger has the ball, and the centre forward makes a run off the back of the right centre half into the space between Atkinson here and the right centre back. This does confuse Atkinson a little bit at times, especially in the Coventry game. Gyökeres, that was one of his brighter moments, was when he made a dart to the front post. It particularly confuses him when there's a centre forward just behind him. It's kind of a gap between the left back and the left centre back. So that is something to pay out for, especially if there's someone like, I don't know, Marlon Pack, who can get caught a bit flat at times. That run can potentially be quite a dangerous one. There are also moments in transition where he'll get caught 1v1, isolated against a winger at the edge of the box. Doesn't always cope particularly well with these moments. It's probably his biggest defensive weakness, to be honest, bigger than the slip runs. The slip runs it can happen occasionally, but not all the time. But the 1v1 is something I really noticed. And if he comes up against a winger who kind of drop a shoulder, make a step over, and then burst off and change direction, I'm quite worried about him, to be honest, in those moments. So that's where you kind of ask Jacob Farrell or Conor Rugby to really help out of him and get back and get set early. So he's not exposed in these moments because he is a fantastic box defender. He's good going man for man, but in transition defending, slightly worried for him at times. Now, just quickly on his physical profile, he's a 6 foot left-footed centre half, which we are very much crying out for. He models, I would say, close to perfect technique when defending aerial duels and headers. He'll pin them early. He tends to get one arm up on the across their back and kind of leap off them without giving away a foul. He's very clever with it. He reads the flight of the ball very well. He's got good distance on his headers, good placement on his headers. He's strong as an ox. He competes with basically every single centre forward in the division and dominates quite a lot of them. He's also got really good balance. He's a big lad and he's strong, but his core strength's top. He doesn't really fall over much. He doesn't get shifted and spun all over the place. Now, in terms of the negatives, he isn't the quickest. If you kind of ranked him on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst, probably around a 4 or 5. He's got a little bit of burst. He's got a bit of a burst in kind of small spaces, but across distance, I do worry a little bit. And as I said earlier, his agility when defending isn't fantastic. He's kind of quite prone to drop in one way and then not being able to react and get over. And the elephant in the room, as I mentioned in the intro, he's not played in 2 years. And the reason for that, he was away at Sunderland, I believe it was, sustained an ACL injury, and the graft was taken from his hamstring, which has then resulted, as also the back of that, is hamstring injuries in both legs due to overcompensation. This is a concern. He's a fantastic player, fantastic defender, but where's his body at? He's one of the players where if you keep him fit, you're laughing, but this is Portsmouth we're talking about. Portsmouth have got a dodgy track record of dealing with injured players and kind of keeping players fit, so that will be something to keep an eye on. Now, when diving into his statistics, and I feel like statistics should always go hand in hand with the eye test, there's no surprises here, and it's one of them where you go, oh yeah, the statistics have actually mirrored what the reality is, like it normally does. He's a high output, high volume, and very successful dueler. In terms of defensive, he's very busy and very successful in the air, which is fantastic. Ball progression is okay. He's really good from carries. But as I said earlier, I'd like to see his passing numbers increase and be braver on the ball, a bit more ambitious, a little bit more disguise. And the biggest, well, not the biggest because it's centre half, but a massive benefit is his XG. It's a huge goal threat. If you look through his goal catalogue, it's a lot of diving headers. It's a lot of scrappy ones in the 6-yard box where he's had the desire to get to the ball early. And we always say, yeah, statistics or whatever, you can make them up, you can interpret them how they want. My angle is always watch the player first and then look at the data. And this is one of the cases where the data more than backs up the player. Now, in terms of where he fits for Portsmouth, defence for a start, he has played a lot in the back three as well as the back four, and he's very comfortable playing in both. He won't look out of places in our back four at all. I like to see him at left centre half with Regan Poole at right centre back, or Connor Shaughnessy. That could work, although Connor does tend to prefer to play on the left, despite being a right foot, which is a bit weird. With Swanson at right back, purely because it gives you even more technical quality on the ball. For me, he's Portsmouth's best right back. He's the complete fullback. He can do everything. He can invert, he can sit, he can overlap, he can underlap, he can do everything. Also means if Rob starts playing more diagonals, Zach Swanson's brilliant in the air, and you can hit a lot of them onto him, win a flick on for Richie or for Lang or whoever that is. In terms of left back, I'd like to see Jacob Farrell there. Conor Overy's really impressed in home games recently, but I think Jacob Farrell long term is a better fullback, and I think in terms of current ability, he's a better fullback as well. We can use Jacob Farrell's 1v1 defending to help out Rob Atkinson in transition, as well as his progressing passing. Obviously, Jacob can also carry the ball really well, but he is a better progressive passer than Rob. So I think you have a really good blend there. He's a player that, as we spoke about earlier, he's dealt with Victor Gyökeres, who is one of the best in the Championship over the last couple of years. Obviously, he's at Sporting Lisbon now, but he can be given a man marking role, and he can be told, right, if you've got, I don't know, Josh Maja, whoever, Emmanuel Lathdaf, he can deal with them and he can take them out of the game. And finally, from set pieces, he's shown he can be a really good zonal marker, especially in a 6-yard box and central. And I feel like that'll be where Joe Perdomo utilises him. So that'd be an interesting thing to keep an eye out too. The most obvious question when deciding if a centre back will benefit your team is very simple. Do they make your team better defensively? And for me, the answer is an emphatic yes. As we discussed earlier, he isn't flawless at all. There are some physical deficiencies in terms of speed, his agility, which can limit his 1v1 defending in wide areas. But he more than makes up for that with his defensive technique, body shape, mentality, grit, ball progression. He's a player that if you keep him fit, of course, have a player on their hands who can be the difference between spending next year in the Championship rather than League One.